This is the first of 4 videos for the EOC review. On Canvas, you have an EOC Review Week module. For that module, you need to take the April 25th pretest before completing this video. Go through, take the pretest, do the best you can, and then work on the video with the packet that you have in front of you. This video will walk you through the test, explaining the questions and having you mark them. You're being graded not only on the correct answers, but making sure you mark what I'm telling you to mark. So you're going to need to circle keywords, cross out any distractors, and put an X through any obvious wrong answers. Now I'm going to be making sure that you mark the ones I'm telling you as the video goes along as part of your grade. So don't just mark down the correct answers and think you can turn it in, because a larger portion of your grade will be that you marked up the text properly. So have a pen or pencil ready, and let's look at the packet in front of you. Okay, question 1. Make sure you have a pen or pencil ready. Remember, we're going to circle any keywords, put a line through any of the distractors, and we'll put an X through anything that's obviously wrong to help us work through this problem. So, question 1. The statements below are from the Declaration of Independence. A. All men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. B. He has obstructed the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither. C. Mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable, than to the right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. Or D. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. So, the question we're looking at is, which statement reflects the Enlightenment ideas of natural law as expressed by Locke? So, the key words are natural law, so put a circle around natural law, and Locke, because you're looking for something that's John Locke's ideas of natural law. So which one of those, A, B, C, or D, reflects that idea? So you should circle natural law and circle John Locke. So the answer is A. So put a star or circle the answer A, so you know that's the correct answer. Founding fathers like Thomas Jefferson were influenced by many Enlightenment ideals. These ideas were incorporated in many important founding documents like the Declaration of Independence. The statement, all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, reflects the Enlightenment ideas as expressed by John Locke. Locke wrote at length about natural law and natural rights. His writings argued that all people are born with natural rights to life, liberty, and property. He believed these rights were independent of any government or social laws. So remember, he came up with the idea of natural law and natural rights. So when you look at the answers, A, all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, you should automatically think of John Locke. Question 2. What did many American colonists use Paine's common sense to justify? So let's circle the key words. Okay, Thomas Paine and common sense. So Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense. So you want to circle both of those. Is it A, acts of sabotage against British merchants, B, declaring independence from Britain, C, joining the army instead of the militia, or D, supporting the British monarchy? Well, you should know that Thomas Paine did not support the British, so you can put an X through D. That should be an obvious. Now, let's look at A, B, and C. C, joining the army instead of the militia, that has nothing to do with common sense. We've never talked about that. They've never mentioned whether you should join a militia, which is a local part of the army, or if you should join the actual army. So put an X through C. We've now narrowed it down to A and B. Common Sense, remember, was the pamphlet that Thomas Paine wrote to try to convince people to leave Great Britain. So it's B. Circle answer B. Declaring independence from Britain. Common Sense was written by Thomas Paine in 1776. It blamed King George III for all the problems in the American colonies. It also challenged the authority of the British government and monarchy. Thomas Paine argued the colonists should declare their independence from Britain. The pamphlet, which is a small book, Common Sense, emphasized the right to the benefit of self-government. It widely read and encouraged support for independence from colonial rule among many colonists. Number 3. The diagram describes a cause that led to the writing of the Declaration of Independence. So we're looking at this diagram, and we're trying to see what led or what built up to the Declaration of Independence. And we got to fill in where the question mark is. So which action completes this diagram? So go up there and circle Declaration of Independence, because that's a key word here. That's what we're trying to get to. Up in the question, circle Declaration of Independence. And let's look through the answers. A, British eliminate all taxes on colonists. Did that happen? Did they get rid of all the taxes? Well, we never talked about that, so you should probably know to put an X through that one. B, the colonists vote to elect a new member of Parliament. Well, remember, we had a king, and King George was not allowing them to have representation, so we know that's not the answer. So put an X through B. C, the British ignored colonist grievances, which is their complaints. Or D, colonists sent troops to Britain in protest. Well, if you remember from earlier in the year, the British fought the Americans in the Revolutionary War in America. We never actually sent troops to Britain, so you can cross out D, which only leaves C. The British ignored the colonist grievances or ignored their complaints. So if you look up at the boxes above, it starts out with the British increased the taxes. The colonists rejected the taxes passed without representation. So the colonists were mad about the taxes and rejected them without being represented. They weren't able to vote on these taxes. So then the British ignored the colonist grievances or the colonist complaints. So the United States declared its independence and wrote the letter, the Declaration of Independence, to the British. Question 4. The Declaration of Independence included these complaints: taxation without representation, so being taxed without being able to have representation or someone being able to vote and decide what we want to be taxed on; limiting judicial powers, so putting limits on the judges; quartering troops, which means having to house and feed troops; and dissolving legislature. So remember, the legislators are lawmakers, so the British, they dissolved, so they broke apart lawmaking groups here in America because they wanted to be the ones making the laws. So which complaint should be added to this list? A, requiring colonists to send representation to Parliament. Well, that doesn't make sense because taxation without representation would be exactly against what that says. Requiring colonists to send representation. Well, they weren't asked to send representation, so we know that one's wrong. So put an X through A. Suspending trial by jury in many cases. C, ordering colonists to move from Native American land. Or D, allowing the wealthy to avoid local laws. So, it could be B, C, or D. They never had the colonists move from Native American lands. If anything, we were always moving Native Americans away from their land so we can take it. So you can put an X through C. That narrows it down to B or D. The answer is B. So circle B, suspending trial by jury in many cases. The Declaration of Independence has 3 main sections. The colonists began by describing their beliefs about government, including natural rights and social contract. The middle section is a list of grievances or complaints against King George III. The document ends with the official statement of independence. Some of the complaints included in the Declaration of Independence include imposing taxes without the consent of the people, suspending trial by jury, limiting judicial powers, quartering soldiers on colonist property, and dissolving local legislatures. Number 5. The passage below was written by John Locke in his second Treatise of Civil Government, which is what he wrote. The passage says, "Government being for the preservation of every man's right and property, by preserving him from the violence of injury of others, is for the good of the governed." So at the top, go up there and circle John Locke. So you get in that frame of mind, we're talking about John Locke here. So based on this passage, which complaint in the Declaration of Independence would John Locke agree with? So based on the passage above, that government is being for the preservation of every man's right of property, by preserving him from the violence and injuries of others, is for the good of the governed. So which one of those below would go with that? Is it A, He has effected to render the military independent and superior of civil power. Doesn't say anything about military, so cross that one out. B, he has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people. Doesn't sound like that one. Cross it out. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without consent of our legislatures. Now, they are talking about your personal property and stuff, so we can leave that one there, because it's a possibility. Or D, he has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for public good. Well, in the passage of John Locke's second treatise of government, he states that government should preserve the people's rights, property, and safety. The grievance of the Declaration of Independence, he has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome necessary to the public good, explains the colonists believe the king had refused to agree to the laws which are necessary for the public good. So based on the passage, it's reasonable to conclude that John Locke would have agreed that a ruler who did not create laws to protect the public good was not fulfilling his duties. So it would be D. Circle the answer D. Number 6. Which of the following was a weakness of the Articles of Confederation? So circle Articles of Confederation, because that's the key word there, and circle weakness. So remember, the Articles of Confederation was the first government the United States tried that didn't work out too well. So which one of these was the weakness for it? Was it A, the government did not have a separate judicial branch? B, the states could not print their own currency? C, the president was able to spend taxes freely? Or D, the government had too much power over trade? Now, if you remember back to the lesson when we made the outline of the hand, and on each finger we wrote different weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation that all led to the fist being Shays' Rebellion. Some of those were things like the states all making their own money was a problem. Well, that being a problem would cross out answer B, because it said they could not print their own currency, and a big problem was that they all did have their own money. C, that the president could spend taxes freely. Well, the Articles of Confederation had no way to collect taxes, so there was no money to spend. So we can cross out C. And D, the government had too much power over trade. With the Articles of Confederation, they had no power over trade between the states, so we can cross out D. So the answer has to be A. Circle answer A. The government did not have a separate judicial branch. If you can remember, the Articles of Confederation only had one branch. So they weren't able to get much done, because they didn't have a branch to enforce the laws, one to create laws, and one to judge the laws. Instead, they just had one branch and didn't have much power at all. Number 7. How did the U.S. Constitution address the problem under the Articles of Confederation that Congress had no power to ensure its laws were followed by states? So let's circle the key words. How did the U.S. Constitution, so circle that, address a problem, circle problem, under the Articles of Confederation? Circle Articles of Confederation. So how did the Constitution, the government we made to fix the Articles of Confederation, how did they fix a problem that the Articles had? Was it A, it created an executive branch to enforce the laws? B, it gave each state sovereign authority over its laws? C, it required the president to resolve disputes between states? Or D, it required unanimous consent of the states to create new laws? Well, if you look at the question, it said, how did it fix a problem that Congress had no power to ensure its laws were followed? Well, the answer to that would be A. Remember, the Constitution created the three branches, and the executive branch, with the president, their job is to enforce the laws. So the answer is A. Question 8 and 9. Because on your paper there's a typo, and the 8 and 9 are right near each other. So question 8-9. What does the phrase ensure domestic tranquility in the preamble of the Constitution mean? So circle ensure domestic tranquility. Let's talk about that real quick. Domestic, what does domestic mean? That means at home. And tranquility, what does that mean? It means peace, keeping things tranquil, relaxed, calm, everybody happy. So what does it mean to ensure domestic tranquility? Ensure home peace. Is it A, give land to the homeless? Well, that has nothing to do with it, so cross that out. B, fight wars on foreign soil? Tranquility is about peace, so I don't think fighting wars is the answer. Cross it out. Keep the homeland at peace? That makes sense. We should probably circle that one. Or provide citizens with insurance. We're not talking anything about insurance, so cross out D. So the answer has to be C. Question 10. This diagram shows the purpose of government according to the preamble of the Constitution. Remember, the preamble is the intro or beginning part. It says the government of the United States in the middle box, and then it has two boxes under it. Blank for its power exists to blank. So which phrases complete the diagram? Is it A, depends on the people for its power and exists to serve the people? B, depends on the law for its power and exists to maintain the law? C, depends on the legislatures for its power and exists to serve the legislatures? Which, do we exist to serve our lawmakers? No, so you should know to just cross that one out. Or D, depends on liberty for its power and exists to maintain those liberties. So we've narrowed it down to three choices. The first section of the Constitution describes the purpose of the document. That's the preamble. We call this section the preamble. The preamble reveals the concerns U.S. leaders had at the time. It described the purpose and duty of the government to its citizens. The preamble, or introduction of the Constitution, explains why the Constitution was written. We the people emphasizes that the government depends on the people for its power, and the government exists to serve the people. They say we the people. So we the people would lead you to believe the answer should be A, which is depends on the people for its power, because we give the power to the government, and it exists to serve the people. It exists to serve us. It's a government made by us to protect us and to serve us. So circle answer A. Number 11. These boxes describe two events relating to the U.S. government. Example A, the U.S. Supreme Court declares a law created by Congress unconstitutional. Example B, Congress passes a new tax law and the Internal Revenue Service enforces it. Now remember, the Internal Revenue Service would be working under the executive branch for the president, because the president enforces the laws, make sure everyone follows the law. So, what constitutional principles are demonstrated in examples A and B? Is it A? Example A is checks and balances, and example B is separation of powers. Is it B? Example A is checks and balances, and example B is judicial review. Well, example B has nothing to do with judicial review, so we can cross out answer B. Answer C, example A, separation of powers, and example B, individual rights. Well, Congress and the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, has nothing to do with individual rights, so we can cross out answer C. Answer D, example A, separation of powers, and example B, checks and balances. So we've narrowed it down to A or D. Remember, checks and balances is the ability for the branches to maintain balance between each other, to keep each other in place. So example A, where the Supreme Court is saying a law made by the Congress, which is the legislative branch, is unconstitutional, that would be a check and balance. And Congress passes a new law about taxes, and the IRS enforces it, that would be separating the powers. Lawmakers making the new law, and the executive branch enforcing it, separating the powers. So answer A is the correct choice. Checks and balances and separation of powers. Number 12. The passage below is from the Federalist 51, written by James Madison in 1788. The interior structure of the government, as that its several constituent parts may, by their mutual relations, be the means of keeping each other in their proper places. Which constitutional principle does Madison describe in this passage? Well, if we look at the passage, it's saying it's keeping each other in proper places. Circle that. That's the key words I see there. Several parts. That's another one. Several parts. Circle that. So breaking into several parts and keeping each other in their places. Is that popular sovereignty? B, judicial review? C, checks and balance? Or D, separation of powers? With this, I would go with answer C. Circle C, checks and balances, because they're checking and balancing. You have several parts, and they're keeping each other in their place by checking each other and balancing out the power, making sure that one branch doesn't grow. So the answer is C, checks and balances. Question 13. Which viewpoint was common among anti-federalists? So the key word there is you want to circle is anti-federalist. Circle that. Now, if you look at the second part, federalist, that's like federal government. Remember, the federal government is the big USA government. So if you're anti-federalist, you're anti or against big government. You don't like a big USA government. You want a lot of small state governments running the day-to-day operations. So would it be A, there's no need for a separate Bill of Rights? B, the Constitution does not give enough power to the states? C, the Constitution will not strengthen the government? Or D, a strong national government will protect the people in times of crisis? Well, if we're looking for the answer that's anti or against big government and is more for the states, it would have to be answer B. So circle answer B. They would want the Constitution to give more power to the states, so the states have more power and the big federal government has less because they're anti-federal government. Circle answer B. Number 14. How does the rule of law affect U.S. government officials and institutions? Circle rule of law, and then circle government officials, as people running the governments. Remember, rule of law is that everyone has to follow the rules of law. Everyone follows the law. The president follows the law, teachers follow the law, students follow the law. So is it A, it holds government officials and institutions accountable to the law? That sounds right, but let's check the others first. B, it requires government officials and institutions to create new laws. It's not saying anything about creating laws, so cross that one out. C, it prevents government officials and institutions from making their work public. Nothing to do with that, so cross that one out. Or D, it ensures government officials and institutions are exempt from the laws, which is saying their government officials get to be above the law. They get to be exempt. They get to be skipped. They don't have to follow the laws. Well, rule of law says everyone follows the law, so we know it's not answer D, so cross that one out. That only leaves answer A. All government officials are accountable to the law or have to follow the law. Circle answer A. Number 15. What is a government that is run by the people, either directly or indirectly? So circle by the people. That's the key word there. So which one of these is a government that the people are in charge? Is it A, a democracy, B, an oligarchy, C, an autocracy, or D, communism? By now you should know that we have a democracy, which is a government that is run by the people, so the answer is A. So circle answer A.